Hello. Stretch, get ready, warm up my vocals, hit that me, you know? How's everyone doing today? Hail hydrate indeed. Let me sippy my water. So, this is a members only stream, which after the ending of the stream, I will open up to the public. So if you are a member, you are able to chat if you catch the stream live. And if you are not a member, no worries. You can always watch the VOD. So if you're watching the VOD right now, just know I don't hate you. I just need to do something to ensure that people will pay me money. Don't just sippy. No, I'm not going to gargle my water. It's like 11 a.m. for me. I'm not going to choke on my water first thing in the morning. But what I am going to do, I am going to reveal that I made a little stage section. Does this not have my chat in it? Why is it not showing chat? That's so dumb. Anyway. So what I did is I decided I was going to make a little scene that I could have where it looks like I'm reading in a little lounge with my cuppa, as those folks across the pond say. Yes, if you pay money, you too can be a horrible monster. Though I wonder why. Let me check real quick why this is not updating the chat, because that is a bit of an awkward conundrum to be hit with. Should probably also say on Discord. I forgot to do this. Do you want to have did you know that Arrow Reads is real? Yes. The end times are upon us. This stream is members only, but will be made public right after it ends. Check live now. Then I grab this. I am a genius. Okay. So, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to, on the stream, I don't know why the chat is not working, but I guess this first one has to be scuffed. Otherwise, it will not be... Listen, there's a curse of scuff that is in all things. You blame Twitch. If there's too many gunshots, that's not my problem. Yeah, I can't change stuff around. So, I'm just going to read. And we'll worry about the color commentary later. But for right now, for today, I'm going to read for you The Monkey's Paw. This is a short story where I think everyone, or probably most people, knows the reference of The Monkey's Paw. I have never read it. I have never actually read The Monkey's Paw, so I know vaguely how it goes, but I don't know all of it. Hey, Olympus. Yeah, for whatever reason, Chad's not showing on screen, so, sucks. The Monkey's Paw. Without, the night was cold and wet, but in the small parlor of Laburnam Villa, that blinds were drawn and the fire burned brightly. Father and son were at chess. The former, who possessed ideas about the game involving radical changes, put his king into such sharp and unnecessary perils that it even provoked comment from the white-haired old lady sitting knitting placidly by the fire. I was thinking that. So because chat isn't working, I could put it up on the left side. Please hold. If I add window capture, and you are capturing you. Because this is a free public domain, Creative Commons. I know what I could do. I could leave the lounge and I could just do this in the main one, right? Right? I could just do this here. So we could do that. How do we feel about this? And then we can worry about... Not you. We can worry about it being less scuffed later. How about that? So who wrote this again? This is by W.W. Jacobs in 1901. It is also titled The Lady of the Barge, or I believe it is a sub-story within The Lady of the Barge. Okay, so, starting over. Without, the night was cold and wet, but in the small parlor of Laburnam Villa, the blinds were drawn and the fire burned brightly. Father and son were at chess. The former, who possessed ideas about the game involving radical changes, put his king into such sharp and unnecessary perils that even provoked comment from the white-haired old lady knitting placidly by the fire. "Hawk at the wind," said Mr. White, who, having seen a fatal mistake after it was too late, was amiably desirous of preventing his son from seeing it. "I'm listening," said the latter, grimly surveying the board as he stretched out his hand. "Check." I should think that he'd come out. Wait, what? Okay, you see this, right? So this is the father. This is the son. This is also the son, but there's a line break. And then this is the father. I'm sorry. I'm trying my best. "Check. I should hardly think he'd come tonight," said his father, with his hand poised over the board. "Mate," replied the son. "That's the worst of living so far," bawled Mr. White, with sudden and unlooked-for violence. "Of all the beastly, slushly, out-of-the-way places to live in, this is the worst. Pathway's a bog, and the road's a torrent. I don't know what people are thinking about. I suppose only because 2 houses in the road are let, they think it doesn't matter." "Never mind, dear," said his wife, soothingly. "Perhaps you'll win the next one." Mr. White looked up sharply, just in time to intercept a knowing glance between mother and son. The words died away at his lips, and he hid a guilty grin in his thin, gray beard. "I assume Herbert is the father?" "There he is," said Herbert White, as the gate banged loudly and heavy footsteps came towards the door. The old man rose with hospitable haste, and opening the door, was heard condoling with the new arrival. The new arrival also condoled with himself, so that Mrs. White said, "Tut, tut," and coughed gently as her husband entered the room, followed by a tall, burly man, beady of eye and rubicund. What? I didn't know this was a word. Of visage. "Sergeant Major Morris," he said, introducing himself. The sergeant major shook hands and took the proffered seat by the fire, watching contentedly while his host got out whiskey in tumblers and stood a small copper kettle on the fire. Was there a weird gap of dead air? Oh no, are we having weird issues? Or was that just your stream? I'm gonna assume that was your stream because I didn't have any issues. At the third glass, his eyes got brighter, and he began to talk. The little family circle regarding him with eager interest, this visitor from distant parts, as he squared his broad shoulders in the chair and spoke of wild scenes and doughty deeds, of wars and plagues, of strange peoples. 21 years of it, said Mr. White, nodding at his son and wife. When he went away, he was a slip of a youth in the warehouse. Now look at him. He doesn't seem to have taken much harm, said Mrs. White, politely. I'd like to go to India myself, said the old man. Just around a bit, you know. Better where you are, said the sergeant major, shaking his head. He put down the empty glass and, sighing softly, shook it again. I should like to see those old temples and fakirs and jugglers, said the old man. What was that you started telling me the other day about a monkey's paw or something, Morris? Nothing, said the soldier, hastily. Leastways, nothing worth hearing. Monkey's paw? Said Mrs. White, curiously. Man, we got a lot of adverbs going here. Well, it's just what you might call magic, perhaps, said the sergeant major, offhandedly. His three listeners leaned forward eagerly. The visitor absent-mindedly put his empty glass to his lips and then set it down again. His host filled it for him. To look at, said the sergeant major, fumbling in his pocket.
It's just an ordinary little paw, dried to a mummy.
He took something out of his pocket and proffered it. Mrs. White drew back with a grimace, but her son, taking it, examined it curiously. And what is there special about it? Inquired Mr. White as he took it from his son, and having examined it, placed it on the table.
It had a spell put on it by an old fakir,
said the sergeant major.
a very holy man. He wanted to show that fate ruled people's lives, and that those who interfered with it did so to their sorrow. He put a spell on it, that 3 separate men could each have 3 wishes from it.
His manner was so impressive that his hearers were conscious that their light laughter jarred somewhat. "Well, why don't you have 3, sir?" said Herbert White, cleverly. The soldier regarded him in that way that middle ages want to regard presumptuous youth.
"I have,"
he said, quietly, and his blotchy face whitened. What, the Scholastic version slapped hard? Listen, I don't know if this is the Scholastic version. This is from 1901, so I hope it's not the Scholastic, like, elementary school book fair version. "And did you really have 3 wishes granted?" asked Mrs. White.
"I did,"
said the sergeant major, and his glass tapped against his strong teeth. "And has anybody else wished?" persisted the old lady.
"The first man had his 3 wishes, yes,"
was the reply.
"I don't know what the first 2 were, but the third was for death. That's how I got the paw."
His tones were so grave that a hush fell upon the group. "If you've had your 3 wishes, it's no good to you now then, Morris," said the old man at last. "What do you keep it for?" The soldier shook his head.
"Fancy, I suppose,"
he said slowly.
"I did have some idea of selling it, but I don't think I will. It has caused me enough mischief already. Besides, people won't buy. They think it's a fairy tale, some of them, and those who do think any of it want to try it first and pay me afterward."
"If you could have another 3 wishes," said the old man, eyeing him keenly, "would you have them?"
"I don't know," said the other. "I don't know."
He took the paw, dangling it between his forefinger and thumb, and suddenly threw it upon the fire. White, with a slight cry, stooped down and snatched it off.
"Better let it burn,"
said the soldier, solemnly. "If you don't want it, Morris," said the other, "give it to me."
"I won't,"
said his friend, doggedly.
"I threw it on the fire. If you keep it, don't blame me for what happens. Pitch it on the fire again like a sensible man."
The other shook his head and examined his new possession closely. "How do you do it?" he inquired.
"Hold it up in your right hand and wish aloud," said the sergeant major. "But I warn you of the consequences."
"Sounds like Arabian Nights," said Mrs. White as she rose and began to set the supper. "Don't you think you might wish for 4 pairs of hands for me?" I can't imagine how horrid a mummified monkey's paw would smell when burned. Listen, hair by itself smells awful when burnt, so a mummified, desiccated monkey's paw would probably smell even worse. Her husband drew the talisman from pocket, and then all 3 burst into laughter as the sergeant major, with a look of alarm on his face, caught him by the arm.
"If you must wish,"
he said gruffly,
"wish for something sensible."
Mr. White dropped it back in his pocket, and placing chairs, motioned his friend to the table. In the business of the supper, the talisman was partly forgotten, and afterward, the 3 sat listening in an enthralled fashion to a second installment of the soldier's adventures in India. "If the tale about the monkey's paw is not more truthful than those he has been telling us," said Herbert, as the door closed behind their guest, just in time for him to catch the last train. "We shan't make much more of it." "Did you give him anything for it, father?" Why is she calling him father? Is that like a ye old version of calling him daddy? Back in 1901, if you were into that, you'd call your partner daddy. You call him father instead. The rankest of smells is simply your average League of Legends esports competition. The second rankest of smells is when you burn the monkey's paw. "A trifle," said he, coloring slightly. "He didn't want it, but I made him take it, and he pressed me again to throw it away. "Likely," said Herbert, with pretend horror. "Why, we're going to be rich and famous and happy. Wish to be an emperor, father to begin with. Then you can't be henpecked." "Oh, that's the kid." Herbert's the kid. I thought this whole time Herbert was the father. Okay, they just have the same voice. Don't worry about it. He darted around the table, pursued by the maligned Mrs. White, armed with an antimacassar? An antimacassar? What the hecky heck? A protective covering for the back. So she's like trying to whip him with a chair cover? Wow. 1901 goes hard, I guess. I think it's like Papa Bear and Mama Bear calling the other Papa Bear Mama Bear. Oh my god, not the "oh father, I've been naughty." You goof. Mr. White took the paw from his pocket and eyed it dubiously. I don't know what to wish for, and that's a fact, he said slowly. It seems to me I've got all I want. If you only cleared the house, you'd be quite happy, wouldn't you? Said Herbert with his hand on his shoulder. Well, wish for £200 then. That'll just do it. His father, smiling shamefacedly at his own credulity, held up the talisman as his son, with a solemn face, somewhat marred by a wink by his mother, sat down at the piano and struck a few impressive chords. Da-na-na, da-na-na-na-na. Sorry. Probably my favorite piano song, like unironically, is Toccata and Fugue in D minor, like the Dracula theme. Unironically, that song goes so hard. And I don't know why I like it so much. It just like, it speaks to my vampiric nature. I wish for £200, said the old man distinctly. A fine crash from the piano greeted the words, interrupted by a shuddering cry from the old man. His wife and son ran towards him. It moved, he cried, with a glance of disgust at the object as it lay on the floor. As I wished, it twisted in my hand like a snake. Well, I don't see the money, said his son as he picked it up and placed it on the table. And I bet I never shall. It must have been your father's fancy. It must have been your fancy, father, said his wife, regarding him anxiously. He shook his head. Never mind, though. There's no harm done, but it gave me a shock all the same. They sat down by the fire again while the two men finished their pipes. Outside, the wind was higher than ever, and the old man started nervously at the sound of a door banging upstairs. A silence, unusual and depressing, settled upon all three, which lasted until the old couple rose to retire for the night. I expect you'll find the cash tied up in a big bag in the middle of your bed, said Herbert as he bade them good night. And something horrible squatting on top the wardrobe, watching you as you pocket your ill-gotten gains. He sat alone in the darkness, gazing at the dying fire and seeing faces in it. The last face was so horrible and so simian that he gazed at it in amazement. It got so vivid that, with a little uneasy laugh, he felt on the table for a glass containing a little water to throw over it. His hand grasped the monkey's paw, and with a little shiver, he wiped his hand on his coat and went up to bed. So I didn't realize that there was like chapters here. So that's section 1. Okay, the paw curls. I know the broad strokes of the story. However, I don't know the specifics. So like, I didn't know that you saw like a simian face like the Ring, right? This is basically just ye old Ring, except instead of having a videotape that you watch, you wish for something with the monkey's paw and then you get it, but at a cost, right? So I know what happens broadly, but I honestly did not expect this. How can I say this politely? This definitely feels like older writing. This feels like older prose. This feels like the sort of, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. X said Y, A said B. I feel like that's a hallmark of, I want to say outdated prose, in the sense that it's not technically incorrect. Just modern writing tends to shift away from that. And I am looking at this from a fiction perspective. I'm looking at this from a novelist, a short story writer perspective, which this is a fiction short story, but like, I don't know. Harry Potter, for instance, had a lot of, said the old man distinctly, said his wife regarding him anxiously, like said Herbert as he bade them good night. All of these sort of said X adverb, and also the plot beat happens, plot beat happens, plot beat happens, and the only real connective tissue between all of them is an immediate reaction. This is a very, I want to say, slow-paced but high momentum story thus far, which is very surprising to me. I was not expecting it to be so plodding, but increasing in velocity, which I suppose is what you want from a thriller, from horror, from tension. You want increasing suspense, which lends itself to a greater sense of momentum and velocity. But the absolute speed of this has been quite slow, which I wasn't expecting. Yeah. So Arrow reads and Arrow critiques. I just kind of figured that anyone can read something. I figured I have my own thoughts and feelings and opinions and my own background in writing. And like, I've conferenced with published authors and I've spoken with editors, and like, I am not quite an authority, I would say, in writing, but I do have a background in writing. So why not contribute in a way that is more than just me being like, just instead of me just being like, whoa, look at this, the monkey's paw curled, I can actually properly give some degree of insight into it. And like, how would I improve this thus far? I don't know if this is going to be paid off or not, because everything I've described is an indication of older writing, not an indication of bad writing, right? If you only clear the house, you'd be quite happy, wouldn't you? Said Herbert with his hand on his shoulder. Well, wish for 200 pounds then. That'll just do it. That's not a bad sentence. That is not poor grammar. That is not misaligned with the values of the character thus far. The son has shown to be a little cheeky up until now. So he's kind of sniping at his father a little bit. But it's also, I think I wouldn't write it like that. I would probably, I mean, that particular sentence I probably would write similar, because if I want to communicate, okay, the son is dunking on his father. So if you only cleared the house, you'd be quite happy, wouldn't you? And then this is a pause to indicate that there is a break between the first sentence and the second sentence, more greater than just a period, but less than a line break. Well, wish for 200 pounds then. That'll just do it. I don't know. I feel as though I don't know or care about any of these characters. And that's kind of what the chess was for, right? The introduction is the father playing chess with the son, the father being reckless, the son being kind of cheeky, and the wife being a bit of a worrywart, a little bit of a, not a helicopter, but some, like, your classic, like, fictional mom. And I have no character traits. I literally confused Mr. White and Herbert for half of what I was reading. So what I would probably do is I would probably alter this front section up before Morris comes in. And I would focus on trying to give a more distinct character trait to each of them. But that's also just my writing style. I like subtle characterization. I don't like muted characterization. Mr. White, we gotta cook, Herbert. Yeah, the characters are strangers. Okay. Now, I would normally be like, oh, what's gonna happen next? Like, what do I think is gonna happen next? But I know what happens next. I just haven't read the story, so we're gonna move on to section 2. In the brightness of the wintry sun next morning, as it streamed over the breakfast table, he laughed at his fears. There was an air of prosaic wholesomeness about the room, which it had lacked on the previous night, and the dirty, shriveled little paw was pitched on the sideboard with a carelessness which betokened no great belief in its virtues. I suppose all old soldiers are the same, said Mrs. White. The idea of our listening to such nonsense. How could wishes be granted in these days? And if they could, how could 200 pounds hurt you, father? Might drop on his head from the sky, said the frivolous Herbert. Like, I wouldn't say, said the frivolous Herbert. I would just say, might drop on his head from the sky, said Herbert. but like I know he's frivolous. So it might be a translation thing. It might be a cadence thing. It might be they want to keep up a specific meter, and that's why they add in like frivolous. I don't know. It's just odd to me. Morris said the thing happened so naturally, said his father, that you might wish that you might, if so, that you might, if you so wished, attribute it to coincidence. Okay, that's definitely just old-timey talk. That is not how I would phrase this. Morris said the thing happened so naturally that you might, if you so wished, attribute it to coincidence. Probably comma after might. Yeah, I think just comma after might would do so much. Sorry. Don't break into the money before I come back, said Herbert as he rose from the table. I'm afraid it'll turn you into a mean, avaricious man, and we shall have to disown you. His mother laughed, and following him to the door, watched him down the road, and returning to the breakfast table, was very happy at the expense of her husband's credulity. All of which did not prevent her from scurrying to the door at the postman's knock, nor prevent her from referring somewhat shortly to retired sergeant majors of bibulous habits when she found that the post brought a tailor's bill. Herbert will have some more of his funny marks, I respect, when he comes home, she said as they sat at dinner. I dare say, said Mr. White, pouring himself out some beer. But for all that, the thing moved in my hand, that I'll swear to. You thought it did, said the old lady soothingly. I say it did, replied the other. There was no thought about it. I had just... What's the matter? His wife made no reply. She was watching the mysterious movements of a man outside who, peering in an undecided fashion at the house, appeared to be trying to make up his mind to enter. In mental connection with the 200 pounds, she noticed that the stranger was well-dressed and wore a silk hat of glossy newness. 3 times he paused at the gate and then walked on again. The 4th time, he stood with his hand upon it, and then with sudden resolution flung it open and walked up the path. Mrs. White at the same moment placed her hands behind her and hurriedly unfastening the strings of her apron, put the useful article of apparel beneath the cushion of her chair. Why would you put your apron beneath the cushion of your chair? Is that what people did? Wow. She brought the stranger, who seemed ill at ease, into the room. He gazed at her furtively and listened in a preoccupied fashion, as the old lady apologized for the appearance of the room and her husband's coat, a garment which he usually reserved for the garden. She then waited as patiently as her sex would permit for him to broach his business, but he was at first strangely silent. I was asked to call, he said at last, and stooped and picked up a piece of cotton from his trousers. I come from Ma and Megan's. The old lady started. Is anything the matter? She asked breathlessly. Has anything happened to Herbert? What is it? What is it? Her husband interposed. There, mother, he said hastily. Sit down and don't jump to conclusions. You've brought no bad news, I'm sure, sir. And he eyed the other wistfully. I'm sorry, began the visitor. Is he hurt? Demanded the mother, wildly. The visitor bowed in assent. Badly hurt, he said quietly. But he's not in any pain. Oh, thank God, said the woman, clasping her hands. Thank God for that, She broke off suddenly as the sinister meaning of the assurance dawned upon her, and she saw the awful confirmation of her fears in the other's perverted face. She caught her breath and turned to her slower-witted husband, laid her trembling old hand upon his. There was a long silence. He was caught in the machinery, said the visitor at length in a low voice. Caught in the machinery, repeated Mr. White in a dazed fashion. Yes. He sat staring blankly out at the window, and taking his wife's hand between his own, pressed it, as he had been wont to do in their old courting days nearly 40 years before. He was the only one left to us, he said, turning gently to the visitor. It is hard. Yeah! No nonsense, Mr. White! Your son just died. Of course it's gonna be hard. What a reaction. Hey, Coyd, your entire family just died. It is hard. Hey, Wumpus, everyone you ever loved is dead. Dang, that sucks. Mr. White. Mr. White. The other coughed and, rising, walked slowly to the window.
The firm wished me to convey their sincere sympathy with you in your great loss, he said without looking round. I beg that you will understand I am only their servant and merely obeying orders. There was no reply. The old woman's face was white, her eyes straining and her breath inaudible. On the husband's face was a look such as his friend the sergeant may have carried into his first action. I was to say that Ma and Megan's disclaim all responsibility, continued the other. They admit no liability at all, but in consideration of your son's services, they wish to present you with a certain sum as compensation. Mr. White dropped his wife's hand and, rising to his feet, gazed with a look of horror at his visitor. His dry lips shaped the words, "How much?" 200 pounds, was the answer. Unconscious of his wife's shriek, the old man smiled faintly, put out his hands like a sightless man, and dropped, a senseless heap, to the floor. Okay. I think I knew this. However, I knew that the son died, but I thought it was like unrelated. No, I didn't know that the reason they get the 200 pounds is because their son died and it was like his insurance effectively. Hey, yo, Mr. White, I'm dead, yo. Anything for that bag, yo. Apron's dirty enough to not want to sit on it, but not dirty enough to worry about making the chair. See, that's the thing. Aprons can get dirty. Like, obviously, it'd be gross to wear it, but the point of an apron is to keep your clothing clean. So the dirtier an apron, as long as the inside isn't dirty, doesn't matter. 200 pounds in 1901 is 21,000. Oh my gosh. Anyone would call it a coincidence. I wouldn't call it a coincidence. If I'm the old man and I felt it like wiggle in my hand and I wished for 200 pounds and then my son died and I got 200 pounds for his life insurance, I'd be like, dang, that wiggle was a premonition of a incongruent reality, discoupled and unrelated to the pathways that the fakir wanted me to walk down. And I have just sinned against the very universe itself, and this is my divine judgment. Like, I'm not one to really believe in magic, personally. But that sounds pretty magic, I ain't gonna lie. So that's like a year's income for a poor person. I mean, not even that. The reason they're doing this is they're like, hey, 200 pounds because that would pay off the house. Like, that would pay off their mortgage. Which I suppose if you had a ability to like wish for an amount of money, how much would you wish for? Because assuming you can't wish for infinite money, because obviously you need somewhere to put the money, you can't wish for $1 billion because $1 billion would crush your finances, right? The IRS would come annihilate you if you're from the US. So if you wish for $1,000, that seems like a waste. If you wish for $10,000, that's nice, but that won't change your life. If you wish for $100,000, that could be pretty crazy. If you wish for $1 million, suddenly you're a millionaire. Will anyone pick up on that? Like, I wonder what the limit is on what is a reasonable amount of money to buy or to wish for. Because if I wish for $5,000, why didn't I wish for 10,000? If I wish for 10,000, why didn't I wish for 20,000? If I wish for 20,000, why didn't I wish for 50,000? If I wish for 50,000, why didn't I wish for 100,000? But if I wish for $1 billion, I think I'd be sent to like Uber jail, right? Because there's no way I'm doing that in a legal means. There's no way I'm going to be able to report that. And if I just stumbled into $1 billion, I wouldn't have the framework set up to protect that money from people trying to take it from me. So I wouldn't even be able to just like pay to win life. $1 million is kind of similar, but it's reasonable that if you had a stock portfolio that was performing very well, you could just stumble into $1 million. You can't really do that with $1 billion. You wish for a completely post-scarcity utopian society that you live in? Congrats. Everyone dies. There's no more capitalism. I'd wish for enough money to end world hunger. We can end world hunger. That's the thing. World hunger is currently solvable. It's just the modern conceptions of ownership and
deservedness of who gets what is preventing manufacturers and agriculture to get that food to people who need it. The reason that we have not solved world hunger is because we did, and we're not acting on it, because it's not profitable. However, part 3. In the huge new cemetery, some 2 miles distant, the old people buried their dead and came back to a house steeped in shadow and silence. It was all over so quickly that at first they could hardly realize it, and remained in a state of expectation, as though of something else to happen. Something else which was to lighten this load, too heavy for old hearts to bear. But the days passed, and expectation gave place to resignation. The hopeless resignation of the old, sometimes miscalled apathy. Sometimes they hardly exchanged a word, for now they had nothing to talk about, and their days were long to weariness. It was about a week after that that the old man, waking suddenly in the night, stretched out his hand and found himself alone. The room was in darkness, and the sound of subdued weeping came from the window. He raised himself in bed and listened. "Come back," he said tenderly. "You'll be cold." "It's colder for my son," said the old woman, and wept afresh. The sounds of her sobs died away on his ears. The bed was warm, and his eyes heavy with sleep. He dozed fitfully. Did he just... Mr. White, your wife is crying. Your wife needs comfort and reassurance. You are supposed to be each other's rocks, and they're like pillars supporting one another. That is what marriage is supposed to be. And she's crying about her dead child who, according to your own beliefs, you killed. And you're just like, nah, I sleep. Brother, this guy stinks. I wish to remove the sin of greed from humanity. Great. Humanity no longer is humanity is no longer sapient. Old married couples supporting each other. See, that's the thing. When you have I'm assuming these people are 60s, 70s, right? Because they have a son who sounds like he's a full adult, or he was a full adult. Thank you. No, you're too kind. He was a full adult, and because he was drinking, he had a pipe. He's the father is described as an old man. She's a white-haired lady. So when you have a couple who have been together for 50 years, they are either the most healthy couple, the most bitter couple, or they do not care about each other whatsoever. I feel like those are the three genders of relationships. It is either you are the sweetest, absolute most romantic, soulmates, life partners, or you hate each other and you want each other to die so you can get that insurance money, or you just don't care. You are below roommates. You are simply two individuals that happen to live in a similar area that also happen to have been married. The sounds of her sobs died away on his ears. The bed was warm and his eyes heavy with sleep. He dozed fitfully and then slept until a sudden wild cry from his wife awoke him with a start. "The paw!" she cried wildly. "The monkey's paw!" He started up in alarm. Where is it? What's the matter?" She came stumbling across the room towards him. "I want it," she said quietly. "You've not destroyed it?" "It's in the parlor, on the bracket," he replied, marveling. "Why?" She cried and laughed together, and bending over, kissed his cheek. "I only just thought of it," she said hysterically. "Why didn't I think of it before? Why didn't you think of it?" "Think of what?" he questioned. "The other 2 wishes," she replied rapidly. "We've only had one." "Was that not enough?" he demanded fiercely. "No," she cried triumphantly. "We have one more. Go down and get it quick and wish our boy alive again." The man sat up in bed and flung the bedclothes from his quaking limbs. "Good God, you are mad!" he cried, aghast. "Get it," she panted. "Get it quickly and wish... Oh, my boy, my boy!" Her husband struck a match and lit the candle. "Get back to bed," he said, unsteadily. "You don't know what you are saying." "We had the first wish granted," said the old woman feverishly. "Why not the second?" "A coincidence, stammered the old man. Go and get it and wish, cried his wife, quivering with excitement. The old man turned and regarded her. His voice shook. He's been dead 10 days, and I would not tell you else, but I could only recognize him by his clothing. If he was too terrible for you to see then, how now? Bring him back, cried the old woman, dragging him towards the door. Do you think I fear the child I have nursed? That's a hard line. I ain't gonna lie, that is a very hard line for a mother to say. And this is why the genie forbade raising the dead. The paw likes to make it natural, but is fond of twisting thy wishes. See, that's the thing. The whole thing with the monkey's paw is not, okay, here's a good thing, and also I'm going to kick you in the nuts. The whole thing with the monkey's paw is, I'm going to give you exactly what you asked for in the worst way. Kind of like a genie, right? Kind of like your classical genie. And I feel like a lot of people assume if I say, hey, I would like... I wish on the monkey's paw, and I say, I want a piece of candy. Like, I think there's a subreddit for this where, like, you can do a monkey's paw wish, and people will respond, like, what your price will be. And people will be like, okay, you find a piece of candy on the road, and because you were stopping and picking up a piece of candy, you didn't notice that you left the stove on and your house burns down. That seems less like what the monkey's paw is, and the monkey's paw seems more... It will alter reality to get you what you wished for in the least obtrusive way to reality. And someone dying and you being paid for their death is a sucky but realistic way for that to happen. Or like your house burning down and you getting insurance on your burned down house, that is a sucky way to have it happen. Basically, in the monkey's paw, it's less... You get a good thing, but also a bad thing happens, and it's more, you don't get it for free. It just kind of forces something to happen that otherwise wouldn't happen. That's how I'm interpreting it. The paw was created to punish those who want to change fate. Exactly. It reminds me, I recently had a video come up in my recommendations where it was about how people just don't understand monkey's paw. That's the thing. The monkey's paw, from what I understand from this, and also externally, what I've heard about it, is... You're trying to force fate into a specific methodology, and so fate abides with malicious compliance. Right? It's not that just something bad happens, it does exactly what you asked in the worst way possible. He went down in the darkness and felt his way to the parlor, and then to the mantelpiece. The talisman was in its place, and a horrible fear, the unspoken wish, might bring his mutilated son before him ere he could escape from the room, seized upon him, and he caught his breath as he found that he had lost the direction of the door. His brow cold with sweat, he felt his way round the table, and groped along the wall until he found himself in the small passage with the unwholesome thing in his hand. Even his wife's face seemed changed as he entered the room. It was white and expectant, and to his fears, seemed to have an unnatural look upon it. He was afraid of her. Wish! She cried in a strong voice. It is foolish and wicked, he faltered. Wish! Repeated his wife. He raised his hand. I wish my son alive again. The talisman fell to the floor and he regarded it fearfully. Then he sank trembling into a chair as the old woman with burning eyes walked to the window and raised the blind. He sat until he was chilled with the cold. Glancing occasionally at the figure of the old woman peering through the window. The candle end, which had burned below the rim of the china candlestick, was throwing pulsating shadows on the ceilings and walls until, with a flicker larger than the rest, it expired. The old man, with an unspeakable sense of relief at the failure of the talisman, crept back to his bed, and a minute or two afterward, the old woman came silently and apathetically beside him. Neither spoke, but lay silently, listening to the ticking of the clock. A stair creaked, and a squeaky mouse scuttled noisily through the wall. The darkness was oppressive, and after lying for some time, screwing up his courage, he took the box of matches and, striking one, went downstairs for a candle. At the foot of the stairs, the match went out. and he paused to strike another. And at the same moment, a knock, so quiet and stealthily to be scarcely audible, sounded on the front door. The matches fell from his hand and spilled in the passage. He stood motionless, his breath suspended until the knock was repeated. Then he turned and fled swiftly back to his room, closed the door behind him. A third knock sounded throughout the house. "What's that?" cried the old woman, starting up. "A rat," said the old man in shaking tones. "A rat. It passed me on the stairs." His wife sat up in bed listening. A loud knock resounded through the home. "It's Herbert!" she screamed. "It's Herbert!" She ran to the door, but her husband was before her, catching her by the arm, held her tightly. "What are you going to do?" he whispered hoarsely. "It's my boy. It's Herbert," she cried, struggling mechanically. "I forgot I was 2 miles away. What are you holding me for? Let go. I must open the door. For God's sake, don't let it in," cried the old man, trembling. "You're afraid of your own son," she cried, struggling. "Let me go. I'm coming, Herbert. I'm coming." There was another knock. And another. The old woman, with a sudden wrench, broke free and ran from the room. Her husband followed to the landing and called after her appealingly as she hurried downstairs. She heard the chain rattle and the bottom bolt slowly drawn and stiffly from the socket. Then the old woman's voice, straining and panting. "The bolt!" she cried loudly. "Come down! I can't reach it!" But her husband was on his hands and knees, groping wildly on the floor in search of the paw. If he could only find it before the thing outside got in. A perfect fusillade of knocks reverberated through the house, and he heard the scraping of a chair as his wife put it down in the passage against the door. He heard the creaking of the bolt as it came slowly back, and at that same moment he found the monkey's paw and frantically breathed his third and last wish. The knocking ceased suddenly, although the echoes of it were still in the house. He heard the chair draw back and the door opened. A cold wind rushed up the staircase, and a long wail of disappointment and misery from his wife gave him courage to run down to her side. And then the gate beyond. The street lamp flickering opposite shone on a quiet and deserted road. And that is the monkey's paw. Yeah. So I knew that the 3 wishes were give us money and then the son dies, bring the son back but he's mutilated, and then kill the son. I didn't realize that the climax would be so euphemistic. Like, so this is a horror short story. That's what I'm interpreting it as, right? I'm interpreting this as it is a horror story. And that is why the monster, so to speak, the son, was never shown. That is why it's kind of just beat to beat to beat. There's the setup of, okay, here's who all these characters are. Then we jump into the monkey's paw. I'm not going to lie. I think the beat to beat to beat, I called it like a slow pace, high momentum. I don't think that was to its benefit, more so than had the beginning been smoother. Right? Because what I was saying before is it was like, okay, so they're playing chess and it establishes the father is kind of impulsive, the son is kind of cheeky, and the mother is kind of doting. And then the sergeant comes and the sergeant tells a story, and then it's all of them asking questions about it, and then it goes blah, 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 blah. I feel like if that had been almost flipped, where it was a bit faster, but it was allowed to have a bit more breathing room. Like if it was faster paced, if it was less beat to beat to beat to beat in a kind of monotone, I guess more diversity of pacing is what I'm getting at. While allowing it to, for instance, let me know that the son was going off to work at the factory, and maybe if he had any thoughts about that. Because like the son at the end of part 1 sees he sat alone in the darkness, gazing at the dying fire and seeing faces in it. The last face was so horrible and so simian that he gazed at it in amazement. It got so vivid that with a little uneasy laugh, he felt on the table for a glass of water to throw over it. His hand grasped the monkey's paw, and with a little shiver, he wiped his hand on his coat before going up to bed. Like, if this could have been expanded upon a little bit, I understand it's for horror, but I don't know, like, I feel like the chapter 2, part 2, whatever, it's very functional. And this is a stylization, I think, of older prose where it describes what needs to happen. It establishes the characters insofar as they have names and they have maybe relationships to each other and then maybe like a character trait. And then it goes through the plot of what it wants to explore. But if it is a more plot-oriented, or if it is a more character-oriented plot like this, I think it suffers when it doesn't focus more on character. Because I don't care about the son. Sorry. I don't care about the son. I also don't... Maybe this is because I'm not a parent, but I don't understand the hysteria both of them have. Because the mother is so histrionically like, oh, I need to see my son, I need to get my son, blah, 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 blah. And the father is like, no, it's a monster, how dare you? But the father doesn't know. The father doesn't know that it's a monster. It's never made clear that it is a monster. This feels like a story written by someone who knows the story that already happened and is retelling it. And they forgot to make it clear that the son was like mutilated and a monster. There's nothing here, unless I missed it, to indicate that the son didn't like come back to life perfectly healthy, crawl out of the grave, walk back home, and then his father just killed him again for no reason. Yeah, because it's like the son is knocking. You never see him. He never speaks. It's never indicated that something bad happened to him. Well, she gets to see the body, but only after the father does the paw again. Yeah, it could have been the final twist for the father learning that the son actually wasn't a monster. That would be brutal. That would be pretty brutal. Yeah, so honestly, I did enjoy it. I have critiques, I have criticisms, but also, of course, I'm going to have critiques, I'm going to have criticisms, I have opinions. Yeah, I hope that you enjoyed me reading this. Please let me know, either if you are in chat right now or if you're a VOD watcher, did you enjoy when I went on random tangents, or would you prefer I just read it? Did you like my analysis, my criticism? Or would you prefer I treat this more as like a story time, where I'm just reading it for you and then I give my thoughts on a different stream some other time? Because I can do either. I can have this basically be like, read you a bedtime story at 11 a.m., or I can have it just kind of be my normal experience of reading something. Okay, because like, you know me, I'm certain that if you watch my channel, if you're watching this video, you know I am going to constantly get sidetracked. I'm going to constantly go on tangents. I'm going to constantly have an idea that I want to explore. And that's how I am with reading and consuming media. So I hope you enjoyed. I'm so sorry that chat wasn't showing during the stream. But I was hoping to do this for like an hour. This worked out fine. Next week, I mean, I could put it up to a vote, but I was thinking we could start King in Yellow next week. We could do Edgar Allan Poe stories. If anything, we could even do something like making a TTRPG adventure. Like, I could stream progress of me working on like a module, for instance. But at least for now, I want to start with readings. You want to put it to a vote? Okay. Yeah, it has been about an hour. Okay. It would be neat, but it's also like 300 pages. So that would take a while. So if I committed to King in Yellow, I would be committing to King in Yellow for probably like 4 months. Just a heads up. So please let me know. I'm going to make a YouTube community post, basically just saying, hey, here's what I did today. Here's my plan going forward. Feel free to join next week if you are a member or if you are not a member. So yeah, thank you so much. I'll put it to a vote, and I think I'm gonna wrap up now. I like having like a quick 1 hour long stream just to do a quick reading. For King in Yellow, I'd probably do like 2 hours, if not 3. But this was like a half-hour read. So thank you so much for coming by. Thank you for coming to my first member stream. Or if you are not a member and you are watching this VOD, thank you so much for watching. Take care so much and have a very pleasant day, night, evening, or whenever. I say this is members first. I think I called it a member chat because it's not even like members get it before anyone else. I mean, you kind of do. I call it member chat, but member first is probably more accurate. Thank you, Wampus. Thank you, Coyd.